Jeffrey Horne at Skyline High is not your average teacher. His students regularly use laptops and 21st century skills to expand and invigorate their learning. Congratulations to Jeff and his students for being Educational Technology Spotlight of the Week. And be sure to check out the following stellar example of student work.
World War II is by far the bloodiest and most brutal war to ever be fought in human history, leading to an estimated 6 million deaths on all fronts. The war was fought in two major theaters, the Pacific and the European. In this video, I will be discussing the European theater, specifically the situation in France following the German occupation in 1940 and how the Allied invasion of France in 1944 was instrumental in ending the Nazi regime. In 1940, following Germany's invasion and annexation of Western Poland, Hitler turned his focus toward the West, drawing up a plan to invade the Low Countries and France in order to establish a new Nazi regime in place of the Republican government. This plan was eventually carried out in May of 1940, and it was clear within days that the Nazi military far surpassed that of the French. France was largely unprepared for the attack from the Nazis because they assumed that the German tanks would be unable to break through the Ardennes, a thick forested area in the northeast of France. However, this line was broken. Paris was eventually occupied on June 14th, and the Nazis succeeded in their establishment of the new government. Additionally, the Nazis were able to completely annex a region known as Alsace-Lorraine, which was rich in natural resources, vital for the success of the Nazis. However, the Nazis did not occupy the entirety of France. Rather, the country was divided into two zones, north and south, respectively known as the Zone Occupée and the Zone Libre. The Republican French government fled to Vichy, a city 220 miles south of Paris in Zone Libre, and continued to enforce the control over the southern departments of the country. However, Vichy, France, soon became a puppet state of the Nazi regime. For 4 years, the French were severely oppressed by the Nazis. Millions of French citizens struggled to survive in Nazi France, where the Germans had seized 80% of the nation's food and agricultural production and left millions to starve. Those at high risk of malnutrition included the children, the elderly, and the urban working classes. The Allies had imposed an international trade blockade on the Nazis and all Nazi-occupied states, leading to an inadvertent damage to France and the French society. There was also an extreme shortage of petrol and diesel fuel, because France had no domestic oil production and was unable to import anything due to the blockade. The Germans tried to fix the food shortages with extreme rationing, and that was ineffective. A black market food ring was soon set up by citizens in major cities in order to help others. All in all, the invasion, bombings, and occupation of France led to a total of 350,000 deaths. On the outside, however, the Nazis wanted others to believe that they had left France largely intact during their occupation. Nazi propaganda of occupied France largely revolved around the idea of showing that the French life and culture was still flourishing despite the German presence in the nation. French authors, playwrights, and actors were encouraged to keep performing and doing work, and the film industry was promoted by the Nazis. While in the early days of occupation, these arts were repressed. The Nazis eventually came to support them as a way to improve their own image to the rest of the world and their people. The Nazis could claim that they had rebuilt French culture and allowed it to flourish, despite the fact that they were the ones who had originally destroyed it. Hitler had originally planned to leave Vichy France as a puppet state in the south unless he was directly threatened in the Western Front by the Allies. Operation Attila was a plan drawn up in the 1940s that provided the basis for southern occupation. In November of 1942, the British and American forces jointly invaded North Africa, which is also under control of Nazi at this point, and the Western Front was now threatened. Thus, Hitler ordered the annexation of the Zone Libre and brought all the French under his control. However, at this point, Hitler had lost too much territory both in the East and North Africa. Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union, had failed and taken out much of his eastern power. Additionally, the Allies had begun the Italian campaign, pushing up from the North Africa into continental Europe via the Italian peninsula. Fighting on three fronts, the Nazis were severely limited in their power. Finally, in June of 1944, General Eisenhower officially issued the order to invade France via Normandy, the northern coast of France. 1,300 Royal Air Force planes, 1,000 American planes, 95,000 American troops, and 60,000 British troops, along with 20,000 Canadian troops, went against 105,000 German troops stationed in an occupied France. The Allies were able to push through the German defenses but lost approximately 200,000 troops in the process. However, it was worth the fight. In August of 1944, Paris was liberated and the Republican government returned to the city. With the loss of France and the almost simultaneous liberation of Poland in the east, the Nazis began to crumble and the war drew to a close. Life for the citizens of France during these 4 years was difficult. However, early in the war, the French had adopted an open city policy, allowing the Germans to march into Paris and other major urban centers without fighting back. Because of this, the French were able to preserve their famous artwork and monuments during the invasion and occupation, and France's culture survived even through this dark time.